Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Come on in. Wait till some people come in before we get started. Y'all know I had to go live early today due to my granddaughter's prom. So, y'all come on in. Come on in. Hit the like button as you come in. I will appreciate it. Hold on. I'm just trying to. Come on in, everyone. Come on in. Hey, Ray Ray. Hey, Auntie. How are you guys on this Thursday morning? How's everyone doing? Good morning, sis. How are you? Good morning. Y'all know I only got an hour or so up here, and I got to jump off because today is my granddaughter prom. So, and I want to do some things before hey, Virgo, before I get myself together for her prom today. So that's why I did an early live today, y'all, because I can't stay on for a long time. Hey, open book. Y'all come in and hit the like button for your girl. How's everyone doing? That's so exciting. Make sure you take a lot of pictures. I will. And thank you. Good morning to you too, sis. How are you? Good morning. Good morning. I know people be like, God, I ain't never seen D go live this early. But yeah. Because I didn't want to just take the whole day off. So I just said I'll just do an early live today and just get off. Yeah. Because I want to know how y'all feel about this case with Carmela and everything that's going on. I know I follow 2 content creators that is covering this story. So yeah, we're gonna jump into it. And I want, because y'all know now it's all white jurors. What do y'all think about it? What do y'all feel about it? How y'all feel this case gonna go? Hey, Latte. Like, how do y'all feel this case gonna go? So we're gonna jump right into the video that I want to share. If y'all want me to stop it and y'all got something to say or whatever, you are more than welcome. But I'm gonna use her live because I love.
Scoop that just happened inside the court, what the jurors are saying, what the prosecution is saying. Now, for the first half of it, the prosecution focused basically on if they had any hangups on covering the trial. But before I go any further, I want to make sure that you guys can hear me clearly. Press 1 if you guys can hear me, and let me know that the sound is coming through. Everything is coming through clearly. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty. So we started out the morning very early. I got here early. And every time you have any dealings with the court, if you've been trying to, establish yourself as media, you talk to the media correspondent over the trial, which is the public information officer, who is Steve Stoller. So he basically emphasizes every single day that we're coming to trial that it's first come, first serve. So what do? Try to get here as early as possible and get in line. So early this morning, I got here around 6 a.m. at right on the dot, and immediately walked up the court steps, stood in line. Me and my uncle, we got over there. We were standing there. And then there were several people that were in the parking lot. They start filtering in and coming up to the stairs to line up. Now, we have to wait until about 7 a.m. to get into the trial. Into the courthouse. And then once we get into the courthouse through the screening, Then we go to what is the ceremonial room, which is basically an overflow room where we can hear the proceedings of what's happening with the jurors, etc. So we go, we filter in, I make it in. I'm the first person that makes it in the building. And once we get in there, we all sit and wait on benches. So you have to sit and wait on these benches that is in front of the court so that you're just not standing around for an hour plus until they open the courtroom. They opened the courtroom at about 8:30 and they asked us to start lining up. Once we started to line up, there was a woman who decided to, even though there was us that came before her, stand in the front of the line. And I just rightfully took my rightful position, which was first, and stood first. She made some type of wow statement as if she didn't know that she did not come before me and that it was first come, first serve, as emphasized heavily by the public information's officer. But that's neither here nor there. I'm sure it'll be a story made about it, a flip narrative, but that's what happened in case, people lie. Anyways, moving on, we went into the courtroom at 8:30. We sat down and we waited just a little bit for the monitors to come on. Now, once the monitors came on and the TVs, the audio, everything came through, the first thing I noticed was Carmelo Anthony had cut his hair. He looked visibly nervous. You can tell that he was on edge, like he was just sitting in his chair and he was looking around. You could see that he was taking heavy, deep breaths, I can't hear him, but looking at the thing, you can tell he was nervous. So the setup that we saw on the TV monitor was the prosecution, their table was to the left, the prosecution's table was to the right, the defense was to the left. It was about 4 on each side. And the first thing, like I said, I noticed was Carmelo Anthony. He was shook. You could tell he was shook. He didn't know, oh my God, what's going on. He had on a navy blue suit and he had a navy blue tie. And from looking at the screen, I couldn't tell if his shirt was either a light pink or a light lavender, but I could tell it wasn't white. It looked like it was a very light pink or very light lavender. His hair was cut, so he has a very, very, very low cut. I don't know if you call it a fade, if it's not faded on the sides. I'm not really versed in that, but I just know that it was a very low, maybe number 1. What's the number 1? All the way down? He had a number 1.
I love
so, anyways, he had a very low cut all the way around, edged up. And with his hair cut very low, he looks very little, very, very scrawny and little. He looks like a kid. A lot of the jurors mentioned that he looked like a child as well. And the prosecution wanted to know if, because of his age, would they have a problem with sentencing him? And a lot of jurors said because he looks like a child, they would not feel comfortable sending him away for the rest of his life. There were several people who made those statements. There were several people who made statements based on they don't know if they can send a brother to jail. It was a black man. I'm like, whoa, I mean, they want you to be honest, but good Lord, what are you doing? They're going to kick you off the jury. But anyways, so there was 2 African-American men that I remember basically saying that they wouldn't feel comfortable sending an African-American man to jail. And the prosecution was just vetting, even if you heard the evidence, even if, this or that, would you be able to decide based on facts? And there was a couple of people who were like, no. And then people who were not even African-American, I feel like the majority, I only heard 2 Black voices that I can recall. But a voice is just a voice. It could have been other Black people on the jury. By voice, I could tell that it was at least 2 that I heard speak. Every single juror did not speak. There was 449 people in that room. The prosecution made sure that we basically knew that, listen, it's a lot of y'all in here. everybody's not going to be able to speak. And one of the first things he said was, I want you guys to speak up. And the people that speak up the most, just being honest, like y'all probably ain't going to be the ones that make it on the jury, but I want to know how y'all are feeling. So he kind of came off joking. He was very likable. The prosecution I'm talking about, his charisma, like he had a lot of charisma. He was making a lot of jokes. And it was a stark contrast from the judge. So the judge, when everything first started, I think he asked the jurors like if there was anything that they had to say or something along those lines. And one juror stood up. It was I don't know if his race matters, but it was a white guy. He stood up and he said that he forgot that he had a subpoena. And he was like, oh, hey, I forgot that I had a subpoena. And the judge was like, I don't care about your subpoena. Sit down. And I was like,
Wow.
that was kind of rude.
rude.
It was really, it was real. He was rude. The judge was rude. And the guy was like, oh, he sat down. So when the prosecutor came up, it was a huge contrast because he came off likable. He talked about, his background. He was making jokes. He was coming off like understanding. And he was the type of person that, if you committed a crime and they get you in that interrogation room, oh, it's okay. Just tell me what happened. He gave off like, oh, tell me how you feel. Like, yeah, we just want to know. But it's like you telling him exactly how you feel is going to get you kicked off, or it could be the thing that sends you to jail. But he came off like one of those type of people that, he can get people talking and warm up to him. And that's what he was doing, like getting a lot of the jurors warmed up and expressing how they truly felt. And I'm going to go over everything that I wrote later on, but just to point out some of what's happened today. Let's go. Okay, so the prosecution, I wrote a note and I said, the judge is extremely rude. I said, he's extremely rude. Carmelo is extremely nervous. He's breathing, taking deep breaths, and he's looking around. Then the prosecution came up. His name was Dewey Mitchell. He was at a table where it was 4 of them, including him. And he said that he was the assistant district attorney. He said he came from a little town in Oklahoma, says he's never been the smartest person in the room, and wants to be clear about what we're doing today. The judge spoke about being fair. He says that, and so basically he referenced a joke, or what the judge tried to make as a joke on Monday. The judge basically said, hey, I think everybody on the road should go 55 miles an hour, and I don't think anybody should go over 55 miles an hour. And he was saying something along those lines. And the start of it, the prosecution was like, he said, well, I just want you guys to know I'm fine with people going 70 miles an hour, So he was kind of referencing something that the judge has said the prior day. And he said that, he feels like that's fine being the speed limit. So he then goes on and he says that his job was to talk about, if somebody is accused of a crime, he wants to make sure that they have a fair trial. And he said that the probability, he said, we got juror number 2 right here in the front, and then we got juror number 449 all the way in the back. He said the probability of juror 449 making it on the juror, I'm paraphrasing, by the way, because I was taking quick notes. But in so many words, he was basically saying like the probability of juror 449 making it on the jury is probably not going to happen, but you still got to pay attention. So he was just letting them know that even though all of you guys are here and there's 449 of them in that room from the 600 that they originally started with, and all of them are not going to make it, but they still have to pay attention. Another thing that he stated was that they are going to have alternates in the jury, and that they will not know who the alternates are. So each juror will act as if they are on the official jury, and they won't know until the end if they are selected to be an actual juror or not. So he then goes on to say, he was asking basically like, you know, he wants people to answer truthfully. And he started to talk about his kids. So he said that he had 2 kids, and he started talking about a baseball game. And he was using this analogy of a baseball game to say, you know, sometimes he was basically saying like, we are a community or whatever. And so he said that he asked if there was any baseball parents. He talked about his kids. He said that the team that his kids play for was bad. And he said that if they lose a game, they had to play early the next day. And he said that, you know, they're basically a community. We all come as a community. And he was wondering how age will play into their decision. He wanted to know, how does race play into their decision? And his fear is, he said he feared how he would approach age and race and all of those things. And he was like kind of nervous about talking to them about these things. And he said that he wants them to speak up. And he said that if they speak up, they got a better chance of not making it on the jury. And then let's see. He said that, okay, so he said, for a fair trial, you have to presume from the start that the defendant is innocent until they prove their case. He said he has to be the one to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed the crime that they say that they committed, and they have to presume them innocent until they are proven otherwise based on the law and based on the evidence. They also stated that basically, whether or not you committed a crime before, like let's say you have a history of going around beating people up, and in this particular case, I'm just using my own analogy, this particular case, you go and you beat somebody up, that doesn't determine whether you're guilty or innocent in this case. The only thing that determines whether you're guilty or innocent in this case is if you're actually guilty based on the law and the evidence. So he kept referring to the pre-existing history, or you know, like whether they had it or didn't have it, or whether they were innocent and never committed a crime before. That doesn't matter. What matters is the crime that they did commit, and that's what's before them today. So after that, and let me check hold on, I gotta come off camera real quick. I just kind of want to check in with y'all to make sure, do y'all hear me? Y'all hear? Because my uncle ain't said nothing. He just,
let me send up messages.
okay. Yeah, I don't see the comments. Where'd it go? Okay. All right. And y'all can still hear me clear and everything. The mic is coming through. Okay. Sound is great. Okay. Okay. Sorry. My uncle's, he's so into the screen. I'm like I'm looking for a clue. Like, are they saying anything? Okay. All right. So I just want to make sure. Sorry, y'all. Also, I'm here, boots on the ground, thugging it out for y'all, bringing y'all the facts, what is going on. If you guys want to donate to the channel, I have a Cash App, Neek at Night Media. I'm independent. There's a lot of media out here that's from big corp.
Brittany, with your question, I'm not sure, sweetheart. I'm not sure. Thank you, Shay. Love you, sis. Thank you so much for your support. I'm not sure about your question, Brittany. I don't know. I really don't.
Operations, they got the big budgets. I'm on my own dime. So if you guys like my coverage, you like what I'm doing, you like my commentary, and you want to support my travel fund, donate to the Cash App. Okay. Also, if you don't want to donate to the Cash App, but you want to watch and enjoy for free, hit the like button. Oh, wait, what's going on? Oh my God, somebody's yelling and cursing. Oh
Lord. Oh
somebody
Lord.
calling somebody a bitch and all kind of.
Oh Lord.
Oh damn. Hold on. Let's find out what's going on. They said, fuck you, bitch, and all that. Normally we walk away from the drama, but we're at the courthouse, so
I love her.
okay, what's going on? I don't know what's happening, but it just got real. Yeah, what was that? Oh, damn.
Don't go too far, Neat.
They saying, fuck you, crackers.
Ooh. Oh my God, y'all. Ooh.
Oh, it's a racist white guy.
Wow. Did y'all hear that?
He drove off. I'm gonna ask them what happened. Ooh, child, it's hot.
I know Texas is hot.
Here come the sheriffs. Can I ask y'all what happened? Right. All right. Well, thank you so much. I just was seeing what the commotion was. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
All right. We walking back, y'all. I didn't know what was going on. It was a whole lot. The guy, I don't know if y'all could see, but it was a guy in a car. I mean, a
Hi,
truck.
Latte.
And then he had a bullhorn, like antagonizing them and stuff, and saying stuff to them or whatever. It was a white guy. So, all right. Let me go back over here. It's probably, what time is it? Because we only had 30 minutes. How long have I been live? Oh, 23 minutes. It's probably all right. So I have to go, you guys. I'm gonna fill you guys in more because it took me about 10 minutes to set up. We only had 30 minutes, so that we only had 30 minutes to cover. And I apologize for anybody who I accidentally showed their face. I didn't know. I was trying to understand. Like, I was like, who are you? Like, what's going on? You know, that type of thing. But I will come back on the next break and update you guys, but I don't want to miss anything. I want to get everything to you guys, and I'm going to later on, we're going to do a full breakdown of everything. So it's about time to go back in. I don't want to miss anything. That was a lot. That was intense.
Yeah,
but
that was.
like I said, I'm here, boots on the ground. If you guys want to donate to the channel, Neek at Night Media is my Cash App. If you don't have any money and all you got is a share button, or anything like that, please help your girl out by spreading the word that I'm here, boots on the ground. We're gonna get the story and we're gonna cover this the best we can. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Okay, y'all, I have another one. I love her because I don't care what happens. This girl travels. I just love her commentary. Like she will put boots on the ground and go anywhere. Anywhere. She always been like that. Always. Like she's really into, her content. So let's get to this one. This is the one she did late last night. Okay, hold on. Let me just get it off of here. Okay, let me take.
Hey, what's up? It's your girl Neek, and you're tuned in to Neek at Night. And tonight I'm going to be giving you guys a full, extensive breakdown on how the jury was selected in the Carmelo Anthony case, what questions the prosecution and defense focused on that kind of revealed what they're going to be going over tomorrow in their opening statements and throughout the case. It kind of revealed like what arguments they're going to have based on what they were asking the jury to basically
on the case too. I'll
try
play
to
hers
see
tomorrow.
what their biases might be. Now, I was in the courtroom in the overflow room where we observed everybody.
Yeah, I don't want to play everybody's stuff. Like if I don't like really go in your chat and stuff like that. So, I fucks with Neek. You know what I'm saying? I've been subscribed to her for so many years. And I like Queen Sheba commentary. She's very good. She breaks stuff down. She's an intelligent person. So those would be the only two people that I really play. Size maybe a straight media news channel. Other than that, I won't, like play really nobody's stuff. She is pretty. Yes, she is. And she has been doing this like for years, y'all, like for years with celebrities and all of that. Like she's really out there.
Who was, well, we observed everybody who's going to be on the prosecution and the defense team question the jurors. Now, the jurors were inside the courtroom. The camera was not facing the jurors. However, there were jurors when they got up and walked out, we can see them. And when they were in the very front row and they stood up, we can kind of see them as well. When they got dismissed, we were able to see, all of the people that got dismissed. And then we were able to see who got seated because they called them out by number and they all walked in front of the camera. So I have a lot of information. I was in there when they decided to strike all of the Black jurors. I was there on why they said they struck them. The defense challenged their choosing to strike all of them and felt like it was based on race. And we're going to go over all of that. I've been seeing some kind of chatter around where people are like, well, both sides picked them and the prosecution agreed for that to happen. And that's not what they agreed to. They contested it. They put in a motion for it and everything. And we're going to break it down, but I'm going to start off from the very beginning. I was there all day. So basically how the jury selection is going is they had all of the jurors, and it was a large number of them, in a totally separate room from all of the public, all of the media, even the legacy media that is selected. All of us were in an overflow room. This overflow room had monitors where we can look on the screen. And on the screen, we can see Carmelo Anthony, we can see his defense team, we can see the prosecution. And when they pan the camera over at the end, we can see the judge, but we can hear them, talk to the jurors. Some of the jurors were hard to hear, but sometimes the prosecution would basically repeat things that they said and etc. So I'm going to be going over everything that happened today. This may be a lengthy live, maybe not. I have so many pages that I jotted down as much information as I can. Now, in these types of cases, what they ask the jurors is very important because that is going to give you a guide on what each side is going to focus on in their case in chief. And I believe that some of the focus is going to be on the legal right to carry a knife. The defense asked several people, did they know that the same way that this is an open carry state and you can carry a weapon like a gun, and how it's legal to open carry a pew pew, did they know that it's also legal to go into a public stadium or a school event with a knife that is less than 5.5 inches? He kept emphasizing the size, 5.5 inches, and being less than that, and that being legal, and asking them like if they thought that was crazy, that that was the legal right. Did they know that that was legal? And everything like that. They went over a lot of questions about self-defense, race, and age. Now, in the presentation of Carmelo Anthony, as we see him in these photos, he has hair. Well, today his hair was very low cut. I don't know if he lost weight or not, but he looks very, very small, very scrawny. And looking at him from the screen, he looked young. Like right now, today, he's 19 years old. But when you visually look at him, he looks very young. Like he looked visually, like if I don't know anything about him, if I don't know anything about the case and I just looked at him, I would think that that was probably like a 14 or 15-year-old teenager. He's 19 now, but a lot of that matters because a lot of the focus of the questions was based on that. It was based on if you can set aside finding him guilty or not guilty and listening to the facts and your bias, can you set aside your bias for how young he looks or how old he is or, things like that. And there was a lot of people who said that due to his age, they couldn't put him away for life. And then there were people on the opposite end who said that they felt like 5 years, because the range between a life sentence or the charge for is between 5 to 99 years. And there was several people who said that they feel like if you take a life, 5 years is too low to give you. And some people felt like, you take a life, you deserve, all these things. And there was a lot of information. So starting at the top, it is heavily emphasized that first come, first serve at the trial. And it is crucial when you're getting into a trial of this magnitude because every single person in the order that you come matters because that makes or breaks if you make it in or you don't make it in. So today there was, like I mentioned earlier, a situation where a person decided to walk to the front once we got in, because there's a line that forms outside. And then once we go through the security, then there's another line that should reflect the same line that was outside. However, when it's time to line up, some people take it upon themselves to walk to the front when they know that they were not first. So I simply walked and got into my first position, being that I was the first to arrive on the courthouse steps, etc. And then, but how that happened was I was first on the steps, first to line up. And then I think after about 40 minutes, I had went to my car and I had drove out the parking lot, came back in the parking lot. And my uncle, the whole time, he was holding my spot because when I went to drive out of the parking lot and come back in, he was there basically holding my spot. Came back in, resumed my spot. Then we went inside. I was still number one. And, that's how that happened. But, I'm sure things will be skewed when they reach other people's explanation. But moving on from that, we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. I just felt like I had to, be sure to mention it as things get skewed. And anybody that's Black is a Carmelo Anthony supporter, whether you are a independent journalist, whether you don't know, the facts of the case. Like me, I don't know the facts just yet. I know what is out on the surface, but I don't know the evidence to know if he's guilty or innocent. I'm operating as the jurors are requested to operate with the presumption of innocence, right? So some of us are reporting with the presumption of guilt, and they are, reporting that he's guilty. And anybody who does as the court advises to go in it with an open mind with the presumption of innocence, and then base your findings on his guilt or innocence once you know the facts of the case. I'm going in with that presumption. But, if you go in with that presumption and you want to hear the actual facts because you don't know the facts, the actual true facts, as there's so many rumors, if you're the color Black, if you're a Black woman or Black man, you're automatically labeled a Carmelo Anthony supporter, and things are automatically skewed in some type of way from other people that are speaking about it. So keep that in mind, when we're talking, but let's go forward. So I wanted to let's start off. Let's see. Okay, so let's go past that. Also to note that in the courtroom today, I don't know, it was this guy that was with this woman that he kept looking me up and down, kept eyeballing me, kept looking my way, and kind of every time I would talk to another colleague or a reporter, I noticed that this guy would be like looking at me, and then there was a woman next to him, and they kind of had this energy over there. So I just wanted to note that as well, that I felt very uncomfortable with this white man kept staring me down, this random guy that was sitting with this woman. That, you know, but anyways, also when I came out to my car when I was leaving, I don't know if it was a coincidence, but his car was kind of like in front of my car, and then when he saw me, he drove forward. So I don't know if that was just a coincidence. He wasn't purposely in front of my car, but I found that to be interesting as well. But that's not here nor there. Let's go on to all right, so I'm going to repeat some of the things that I talked about earlier, and just take you guys completely through the day from start to finish. I did a live earlier when I was at the courthouse. If you guys did not check out my live when I was at the courthouse, definitely check it out. I was boots on the ground. I was at the courthouse. You can see that I was there, Collin County, you know, courthouse behind me, reporting to you guys live while everything was coming out. And check that one out. But if you did, I'm going to still repeat some of the things that I said there, because in this live, we're going to go over everything. Now, with that being said, at the start of the hearing, the judge, he asked, he had made like a statement, like if anybody had any questions or concerns or something to that effect. I was trying to jot things down quickly. So, you know, I sometimes I'll paraphrase because I can't write exact quotes. Like I type a lot faster than I write with a pen and paper. So the judge basically asked the guy, he like made a general statement, and he was basically like, if anybody had any questions or comments that they wanted to make. A guy got up and he said, "Oh, I forgot that I had a subpoena. I forgot that I had a subpoena that I had to go to." And very rudely, the judge was like, "I don't care that you have a subpoena. Sit down." And then I was like, "Ooh, that was a little bit much." Also, what I noticed right away when the cameras came on, like I said, we noticed Carmelo Anthony. He appeared to be extremely nervous. Like you can visibly see that he was nervous. He was, you know, taking deep breaths. He was like, you know, those things like that. And why this information is important is because a lot of you guys are not in the room and you want to know what's going on. There was also questions earlier. Why do we care if he was nervous? Why do we care this or that? Because people want to know what the atmosphere was like, what the prosecution atmosphere was like, what their temperament was, what the defendant was doing. That's all the types of questions that I always get anytime that I cover a trial. And this has been, you know, I don't know how many of trials that I've covered, but we always like to give the background of what the energy in the room is. So immediately off the bat, Carmelo Anthony's energy was nervous. He had a very high nervous energy. He was looking around. He was kind of like, you know, looking a little fidgety. You can tell like in his facial expression, he was worried. His defense team, they were like, in the start, they were kind of like jotting things down on their notepads. And the prosecution was the first to do their voir dire. So the prosecution had about an hour and 45 minutes to do their portion of the voir dire. And then after they went, then the defense had an hour and 45 to do their voir dire. So when the prosecution went up to do their voir dire, what I noticed right off the bat were there were 4 people at the prosecution table. There appeared to be a white man that was the main prosecutor, who is Dewey Mitchell. And then his co-counsel was also a white male. There was a lady in the back. I'm not sure what her role was, as far as like, she was helping them like write down all of the information. I was seeing her like notate everything like the jurors were saying. It was her and another woman. One woman looked to be Hispanic, and then the other woman was white. On Carmelo Anthony's side of his defense, his main defense attorney is a white man by the name of Mike Howard. And then his co-counsel was a white man as well. And then there was 2 ladies in the back table that were like, I saw them writing down like what the jurors were saying. Those were 2 white women as well. A lot of people always want to hear basically what the makeup is of the prosecution and the defense. Now, when the prosecution the main prosecutor went up to do his voir dire, what I noticed right off the bat was he was charming. He was charismatic. He had a bubbly personality and he was likable. I've covered a lot of cases where more often than not, the prosecution is
for you to be able to tack it down. This is what we're looking like. Super cute little side part moment, but I'm gonna take a little bit of foam just to like calm down this hair.
Hold on, y'all. Let me get
and then we're gonna see what
this.
In 5 minutes. This is how we're looking. And don't forget, she is 100
a-holes. They're mean and they're unlikable, and it makes you kind of, even if you like don't have an affinity for the defendant to be innocent or not, it makes you kind of want to go again, like in your mind. Like I'm not served on the jury, but in my mind, I've always thought like, ooh, I don't like that prosecutor, you know, and that kind of affects the outcome, in my opinion, of the case. Now, in this situation, the prosecution or the prosecutor that spoke, he was charming. He had humor. He was funny. He was making jokes. He wasn't like mean and overbearing like I've seen a lot of the prosecutors. Like, think about the YSL trial with Miss Love, Attorney Love. She was unbearable. I also did the ASAP Rocky trial where the prosecution in that case, he was so overzealous, rude. It was crazy. So the prosecutor, he was warming up to the jury. He was making them laugh. He made a joke about, you know, oh, you guys got me feeling like I'm Kevin Hart up here. And then he went to his co-counsel to show their height difference and how he's a short man and how his co-counsel is like very tall. And he was like, you know, making jokes. I couldn't hear if the jury room was laughing, but I know that a lot of people in the overflow room, when he was making these jokes, people were laughing. They found him humorous. They were like I can see the people in the overflow like warming up to the prosecutor. And I believe that his personality and the tactic that he used was very effective in getting the jury to talk and be honest about their answers. He made them feel like he kept saying like, yeah, you see, they answered and they're still here. Nobody's got kicked off yet. Like, you see, this person gave their answer and, you know, they're still here. They haven't left yet. So even though he knows that they weren't going to pick who gets struck out until the very end, but while he was questioning, he kept like, I think both of them kept like making a note, like, look, he answered. They gave that answer and they're still here, you know, that type of thing. And I can tell that after those type of comments, more and more people were being forthcoming, more and more people were speaking up, more and more people were saying how they felt. It felt a lot like, if you ever watch those First 48 interrogations where there's a criminal and the detective like tells the bad guy, he's like, oh, I know that you're not a bad person. As soon as they say that, you know, I know that you're not a bad person, and then the criminal like finally spills all the details on the crime, and then, you know, they give him that, oh, thank you, you know, yeah, I know you feel much better getting that off your chest. And then right after they get everything off their chest, they go and lock them up. That's kind of what it gave, but this was with the jury. So, you know, he was warming them up, buttering them up, and they were forthcoming and they had a lot to say. So his name is Mr. Dewey Mitchell. He is the assistant district attorney. He said that he was from a little town in Oklahoma, says he's never been the smartest person in the room. He wants to be clear about what we're doing today. And he talked about how the judge spoke about things being fair. And he basically made a reference to a joke, or not a joke, but a comment that the judge had made on Monday, where the judge was basically saying that he thinks that everybody should drive 55 miles an hour, and he doesn't think that anybody should go over 55 miles an hour, and everybody should, you know, go that speed limit, etc. And so the first thing that Dewey Mitchell did was he said, listen, I want you guys to know that I think it's fine if you drove 70 miles an hour, like warming up to them and everything, like showing that like the contrast of like, look, the judge, like he didn't say this, but to me, that's what I picked up was, look, the judge is very strict, but I'm cool. Like I'm the cool guy. Like that's kind of what it gave. Like, look, he's the meanie, but I'm cool. Like I'm the cool guy. Like that's what it gave to me. So then he talked about his job and what they expect when somebody is accused of a crime. They want them to have a fair trial. He said that the probability of juror number 449 being on the jury was not probable, but he wanted him to pay attention anyways. And he said that if anybody has a feeling that the case wasn't going to be right for them, if they heard anything on the news about the case and they felt like they could not set their bias aside, he wants them to speak. He doesn't want them to wait for them to get into the jury room. And then once you're in the jury room, now you're like, oh, well, I can't, like, I'm kind of biased. I can't make a decision. They wanted to weed out as many people as possible who had a potential bias before there was the chance to get in the jury room. And then now you're speaking about, this bias that you have and everything like that. So he also talked about that he wanted everybody to answer truthfully, and they want 12 people on the jury who can keep an open mind and listen to the law and the evidence. He asked if there was any baseball parents there, and he talked about his kids' team and how they were a bad team, and if they lose a game, they have to play at 8 a.m. the next day. He said that all he could think about was how, as a community, how will he be able to, approach these topics to the jury? It was a lot of, topics about race and age, and he was like pondering how he can pose these things to the jury. I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of, what he was getting at. He said he wanted to know, how does race play into it? And he talked about, his fear around how to approach it. He said that he wants them to just talk to him and speak. And he said the more a person spoke, the better chance they got at not being on the jury. He said that he said, like, what is the concept of a fair trial? And he talked about the concept for a fair trial is the presumption of innocence. You have to presume they're innocent. And there has been people who went to trial that hasn't done anything. If the state of Texas is going to charge you, they better be able to prove it. That person is innocent until the state of Texas can prove otherwise. Whether a person testifies does not prove if they are guilty or not guilty. What I'm asking is, if any of you feel like if somebody doesn't testify, you are going to hold it against them. And then so everybody stayed quiet. And then he talked about wait, what? Oh, so then he did an analogy, and he walked up to, I'm sorry, I got a bunch of scrabble on the paper. So then he went up to his co-counsel and he did an analogy, and he was like, he walked up to his co-counsel and he put his hands up to him and he said, so, hey, this is my co-counsel. If I go up to my co-counsel and I shoot him in the head and all of you guys see me shoot him in the head, does he have a right to a fair trial? I mean, do I have a right to a fair trial? And then he was like, yes. So he said, asking the jurors, like, what they felt about that. Like, what do you feel about what analogy he just used? And then he asked, would they hold it against Carmelo Anthony if he doesn't testify? One of the jurors said that she doesn't know the answer to that. And then she asked, could they follow the law if the judge told them to not hold it against them? So then he explained about how
it is the prosecution's burden to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, and the defense does not have the burden to prove anything, in that they are expected to not hold it against the defendant if they choose not to testify. And he wanted to know if there was anybody who would listen to the case and hold it against Carmelo Anthony if he chooses not to speak. And then he went through different jurors to see how they felt about it. So one of the jurors said, wait. And they wanted to know if any of them heard about the case, or if they knew about the case, or anything like that. And what they, based on what they already know about the case, could they hold that against Carmelo and not consider the evidence that is presented and not follow the law? So then different jurors started to speak about how majority of them already heard about the case. Majority of them had already known things about the case. Family members had talked to them about the case, etc. So one juror said, I heard about it from my daughter. I saw people holding signs on both sides, but I don't know the facts to form an opinion. The prosecutor said he feels, that's when he gave his analogy about Kevin Hart. And then it says, okay, and then he wanted to know, okay, so basically on Monday, there was a group that was advocating for Austin Metcalf, and they were holding up signs and saying that he deserves justice. And then there was groups that were supporting Carmelo Anthony, and they were right in front of the courthouse, and they were, loudly supporting Carmelo. So what the prosecution was basically then asking them is who saw the signs, and who, did they know what the signs meant, and did they know about the case? So, and if they could set that information aside to make a fair verdict based solely on the evidence. It says they were asking if, anybody felt like that would affect their judgment. One juror started talking. I couldn't really hear what he was saying. Some of the jurors, when they spoke, some of them would be, I guess, further back, and some stuff I could hear, some stuff he would repeat, some stuff I couldn't hear. So one guy, I couldn't hear him. And then he said, is there anybody who can't let it go, or has a fear that what their family or church think of their decision will affect their decision? So, is there anybody who, you have family that have strong opinions about the case, and because your family has strong opinions about the case, do you feel like you won't be able to listen to the evidence and make your own decision based on that? And a juror stood up and says that he has a son at the same age of both the defendants and the victim, and he thought, what would I think if that was my kid? So he personalized it. It was a white man, basically. He didn't make it on the jury, but he was a white man, and he was basically saying that I put myself in the shoes of what if that was my son, what would I think, or whatever, insinuating that he would be leaning in favor of the victim versus the defendant or whatever. And the prosecution basically said, I don't care what you feel about it or what your opinion is. I promise I want to know, but I don't care. He said, if you base it on you having kids and not the law and evidence, then that's a problem. So the prosecution was telling them well, I understand that you have kids. And then he even elaborated that a lot of you guys have kids. We can't base the ruling on guilt or innocence based on if you got kids or not. You need to base your decision on the law and the evidence that is presented. And he kept basically reinforcing that it is up to the prosecution to basically have the burden to prove that fact. We got to prove it, but you can't just base it off of it's so this is he's guilty, or I would think he's guilty, or like that. So then one of the jurors said that she was a middle school teacher and she thinks about the impact down the road. Once she found out about the case, she doesn't think she can do it. So she was basically saying that she teaches middle school kids and she kind of knows like the nuances of different things. And in her mind, she didn't think that she would be able to make a decision on his life down the road. The prosecution says that he was like, okay, well, that means that this might not be the case for you. And the whole time, the prosecution, he was so charming. Like, I cannot even express enough. Like, he was charming. Like, I was like, ooh, I've never seen a prosecutor as smooth. Like, he was smooth. And those types that are smooth.
He was only smooth for now. He was just getting he was only just smooth for now, wanting people to like him and stuff, but he gonna rip this case a asshole. He know that.
Move like that. That's even more of a battle for the defense because of that fact. So
yes.
Anyways, and also too, let me take just a quick break to say it is a lot of you guys in the room, a lot of you guys who are new here. I can tell by some of the comments, and I can see the thumbnail pictures. Normally, I have a most majority all Black audience, but I see that there are a lot of thumbnails that are not, and I see a lot of comments that are very different than what they normally would be for my channel. We welcome you guys all here. Thank you for watching. My name is Neek. I am an acquired taste. I am an independent media reporter. I cover trials, gossip, social events, mostly in the Black community. And my audience is mainly Black individuals. I don't really tackle, I don't really deal with a lot of like,
a lot of podcast platforms try to be all in one, but Riverside actually is. Here's how I use it. I go to riverside.com. I shoot a
racist, but I understand that this case has a lot of racist pouring on in, and me simply being a Black woman, a lot of you guys, because I'm Black, you are writing in the comments as if I've killed somebody. I've never murdered anybody. I've never done that. I've not been, you know what I mean? So it's interesting to see like the vitriol that you have just simply because I'm Black, and you're putting your vitriol on a defendant that I have no ties to on me just because of the color of my skin. But thank you for watching. Make sure you hit the like button. And if you don't like me just because I'm Black, hit the dislike button. It, makes me know, never mind. But thanks for watching. Those of you guys who enjoy the commentary and enjoy listening to all of the details that mainstream media is not going to give you, they're only going to give you the quick hot button.
Absolutely.
Point. No Black jurors, no, you know what I mean? They're not going to give you like all of the intricate nuances. And then the other people that claim to give you all of the intricate nuances is going to be lopsided. It's going to be one-sided. Everything is going to be Black people are criminals, uncouth, can't act. Everything is going to be skewed one way. Me, I'm able to be fair. The prosecution was charming. The prosecution was good. Will you see that type of balance other places? No. Everything for the defense is going to be the worst thing, and everything for the prosecution is going to be the best. I'm not like that. If the prosecution does good, we're going to say it. If the defense does good, we're going to say it. If they do bad, we're going to say it. If there's something that is in Carmelo's favor or not in his favor, we're going to say it.
And that's why I like using her commentary when she do cases that I like to cover, because she's very professional and she always boots on the ground. I don't like using everybody commentary because some people can put out false stuff, and y'all know over here I don't like sharing false accusations. I don't like that. I like to bring y'all the truth. So I like to deal with content creators that's bring the truth when it comes to cases like this. Because when it comes to things like this, you don't want to put fake narratives out, because sometimes you can lose supporters. They won't have faith in you because you're putting out fake stuff. So when I cover big cases like this, I like to stick with facts. And when I say facts, I stick with content creators that I know that's been doing this for a long time and boots on the ground. And even if they don't have boots on the ground, they've been doing stuff like this longer than me. Okay. And she's been doing this way longer than me. So I don't mind, covering her commentary, and I don't mind covering Queen Sheba commentary. And there's some more content creators that I know that cover stories too, but I have not been following them for a long time. But like I said, I just follow people that I know gonna put facts out, because you don't want to start sharing people commentary and telling people to subscribe to their channel and all this stuff, and they bringing out fake information. You know what I'm saying? So I like to stay on top with things like this, and I know she's good at this.
The other people are not. Everything is going to be the worst possible outcome for Black people. The worst.
No, the trial is lasting more than 3 days. The trial is going to last, they said, at least 2 weeks. By the end of this month, in the middle of this month, from what I heard from Queen Sheba, I think it's going to be like 2 weeks or so, and that's it. And this is the quickest case I heard on a murder trial that's going to be only 2 weeks, because this is going to be an open and shut case, y'all. This is going to be an open and shut case. Now, the case that they just did in North Carolina with that guy, that store gas owner killed that boy, that case happened in 2024. And they just started trial on that case this year. So this is the first time I've really heard about a case like this, a murder case going to last for 2 weeks. I was shocked when I heard that.
Worst possible narrative for Black people. Anybody Black is going to be labeled a Carmelo Anthony supporter. Anybody Black is going to be everything under the sun. And we see how they feel about us by their thumbnails, their comments, and we can distinctively tell who is here to listen to unbiased, fair reporting, and who is here just to cause racial division, and who is here to try to stir up the pot and, show that and let it be known how much they don't like Black people. Like, they're using this case to let us know how much they don't like us and how much our existence
That's
bothers
really sad.
them, okay? But with that being said, if you guys want to support the channel, hit the like button. If you don't like the channel, hit the dislike button. If you want to support my travel fund, donate to my Cash App, Neek at Night Media. That is going to help fund me staying here. My uncle has been helping. I had other people in the cut. They all drove from different places, and although he's not charging me, I would like to compensate him on his time. So if y'all can help out, lighten the load on that, just so that I'm, there, I'm not by myself, and, his time is valuable as well. All of that would be appreciated. Neek at Night Media, I'm going to try my darndest to do the best that I can to lay out both sides, all nuances. We're not going to have this one-sided everything for just because you're Black is the worst of the worst. We're going to enter this thing with the presumption of innocence as the same thing that the judge and the prosecutors told the jury to do. And we're going to report just like that. We're not going to go off of,
Karen,
rumors, narratives, anything like that. We're going to go off of what is said in court. With that being said, let's get back to it. And like I said, welcome to all of the new people here. All right, so let's go back where we left off. Oh, okay. So he was telling that juror that might be not the right case. All right. So, so then that's when another juror was a Black man. He said, I don't know that I feel right putting a brother in jail. So anybody who made any type of statements like this, where they said like, well, I don't know that I can convict him because of his age, or I don't know if I can convict him because he's so young. These people were excluded from the jury. So this comment excluded him. So it it pushed him further. It was like the opposite. Like, I don't want to put a brother in jail, but then if you are not wanting to put him in jail, then you would think that you would want to be on the jury so that you can make sure things are fair. Don't just not send him to jail because he's black, but if you're on the jury, you can make sure that the evidence is what everybody is basing it on and not just his race, if that makes sense. So it's like by you saying that, you put him further in jail than not, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyways. So the prosecution said, remember me saying, based it on the law and evidence, asked if they find him guilty, can he follow the law and put an African man in jail? And then he doubled down on it and he said no. So a different juror says they have a moral religious beliefs that they can't sentence someone to jail, and says it violates their religious views to accept punishment. So he probed a little bit more on that. Like, what do you mean by that? And they were basically saying that based on their religion, they can't like say, hey, this person is guilty, sentence them to XYZ. That's kind of, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically kind of, what was said. So then there was a woman who, she sounded Latin, and she went into this story about her kids and how she tells them to defend themselves. And then she talked about some situation that happened at school, and it was like this long drawn out thing. And I was like, what is she talking about? She was saying like how she tells them to defend themselves no matter what. And I think at the end, she ended up saying like, but not with a knife or a gun, or it was something like that. But in order to get like what she was saying, like, it was this long story that just was like, okay, well, like how like 1 + 1, like, okay, how do like what are we doing here? Like, it was drawn out. So the prosecution said, I want to talk to y'all about the crime. Let's talk a little bit about what murder is. First degree, second degree murder in Texas, they have different offenses based on what's in the mind of the individual. He talked about negligent homicide. He talked about manslaughter. And he talked about whether or not, he said, murder is the intentional or knowing of taking a life. Then he talked about capital murder. There is nothing in the law in the state of Texas on premeditation. He said, okay, he said, what if somebody says, I didn't mean to kill somebody, and they say they just meant to wound them, but they take a life? You can't say, well, I didn't mean to do it. So he was basically saying, okay, like, what if you have a person that says, hey, like, I stabbed them, but I didn't mean to kill them. I just wanted to hurt them, but I just wanted to stab them, but then they ended up dead anyways. He was basically saying, like, you can't turn around and say, oh, well, they're dead, but like, I didn't mean to kill them. Like that's basically what he was saying. And then he said that if the jury can like consider that and use that, and then the prosecution says there's nothing in the law that says that they planned it by premeditation or that they have to prove premeditation. So he basically said, I think somebody asked about like, okay, like what if it was premeditated or something like that? And the prosecution was saying that their burden that they have to prove is they don't have to prove that the person planned it. Like they don't have to prove that whether or not like it was premeditated or not. They just have to prove that it was murder, basically. And in so many words, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he was saying. So one of the jurors asked about manslaughter, and they said that they wanted to know like what about manslaughter? And then the prosecution said that in the state of Texas, they have what's called sudden passion. So instead of, I guess, it being labeled as manslaughter in the state of Texas, it's labeled as sudden passion. So then he said, anybody on the first row feel that says, I hear what you're saying, but if we are talking about someone young, that may affect you to render a true verdict. The law doesn't say you get to commit a crime because you are a teenager. So he was basically asking and probing if anybody on the jury thinks that because he's young, you might not be able to find him guilty. And then he went on to basically say, just because you're a teenager doesn't mean that you get to commit a crime. Like, oh, I'm a teen, so I can commit a crime. And then have people thinking that because you're a teenager, that you can get in trouble for it. And then he wanted to know if the fact that he is young, will that affect anybody on the jury's decision to render a verdict and on guilty or innocent or not guilty. And then one of the jurors said that I can't promise to render based on age, says for punishment, but can't find guilty or not guilty. The prosecution went through each row asking if age will play into them making a decision on finding someone guilty. And then they wanted to know, one of the jurors asked about like the alternates, and he said that the jurors will not know who the alternates are. So all of them will go into it under the presumption that they are the juror, and they won't know who's the alternate and who's not until the end. One of the jurors says she has things going on in her life that she doesn't know that she can send somebody young to jail for the rest of their life based on one conflict or mistake. So she was basically saying, listen, like he's a young guy. Like, I don't know that I can commit to sending him to jail off of one mistake that he made in his life. Like, I don't think that I can do that. And then so the prosecution said, some of y'all are looking like that boy looks like a kid. To me, is there anybody who feels like 276 that it looks like a kid, so you can't take the oath? Because some of them expressed how young he looked. And like I said, I was looking at the TV monitor and he looked young, like he looked little and like he looked like a kid. He did. Not a kid, but he looked young. And so he said, do you think you will base your verdict on age rather than law and evidence? One of the jurors said that he isn't sure he can take the oath this week. The prosecutor said there are two phases in a trial in Texas, guilt or innocence. Did the state prove their case? The only question for the jury is, did the person commit that crime, not what they did before or not? Because I think one of the questions was, does their prior criminal history come into play? And then he was responding that like it doesn't matter like what they did before or after. Like what matters is the crime that's before them and if he's guilty or innocent of that. And then that's when I wrote my note where I said the prosecutor has a very charming and likable personality. Another juror said they don't feel they can make a decision and they couldn't. I couldn't really hear them, but they said that what the prosecution responded, they couldn't make a decision. Okay, so another juror said, I will not feel comfortable finding an African-American male guilty. And then, so that was the second guy that was a black guy who said, I will not feel comfortable finding an African-American male guilty. And then he said, anybody, so then the prosecution said, anybody feel race can affect guilt or innocence? One of the jurors said, race plays a role with who gets charged with what, and concerned about that with this case. Now, this juror was, hold on, let me make sure this was one of the ones that was excused. I believe this one was definitely excused. Hold on, let me check, let me double check the final numbers. Yeah, they were excused. So anyways, so they made like a big point about, and when I jotted what they said, I kind of like tried to get like the key. I didn't write like every single word for word because I'm trying to keep up with a pen and paper. But so I wrote like that. But basically, they made a speech about how certain people get charged when others don't. That kind of was their reason why they felt like race played a role. They said that they feel like, race plays a role with who gets charged with what, and they're concerned about it. Basically, they were alluding to like they didn't say they don't feel like if he was not Black, he wouldn't have been charged, but that's what they alluded to. Basically, like, I'm concerned because it's evident that some people get charged when other people won't. That's what they were saying. And then the prosecution said, all I can ask is that you guys be as honest as possible, knowing your beliefs. Will that play into you finding someone guilty or not guilty? And one of the jurors talked about moral decisions. Many jurors said they don't know if they could base the verdict on the evidence and other factors may weigh. Then I think, well, I got a different time here, 10:30. So I think we must have left and came back. So he asked, so basically, then he made it a point to say, what do you think about if somebody provokes you into a fight and they provoke you to like fight them, and then you react to them fighting, like to them provoking you, and then they kill you? How do they feel about that? Like, you can't provoke somebody to fight you, and then when they fight you, you kill them, and then claim that you're innocent. It's like, that's kind of like what he was explaining in so many words. And that was like one of the points that he was making. I have so many pages left. Let me know if you guys just want me to paraphrase the rest, or do y'all want me to like literally walk y'all through what everybody is saying. If I rock through everything, it's going to be pretty lengthy, but I have time. If y'all let me know, like, do you guys like this pace? Does it seem too drawn out, or do you prefer me going through what each person said? Like, how do you guys feel about that? Let me know right now, because I could just start, paraphrasing some things or whatever. But I kind of feel like when you're not in the room, you kind of want to know, like, what are they saying? What are they basing it off of? And things like that. So let's see. Let me see what y'all. Somebody said, great details. You're doing great. I want to hear. Yes, keep the pace. Let me see. Oh, wait, hold on. Somebody said, don't paraphrase, tell the truth. Give us details. Okay. All right. Somebody said, I love the details. All right. So also, super chats, cash apps, all of those things help a sister out. So even if you don't like me, but you enjoy the content, you know what I'm saying? Tip the host. Anyways, all right. So we'll keep the same pace, but I'll try to speed it up a little bit. I know that it's a lot to go over. I was writing. I was trying to get as much down as possible. All right. So, oh, hold on. What was the last?
So yummy.
Hold on, y'all.
Never trying these.
Snack time's easiest to guess.
All right. So then one of the jurors said that she has a problem because to her, he looks like a child, and she wouldn't want him to spend his whole life in jail, and she hoped that he learned. And she said that she wouldn't want to she didn't feel comfortable sentencing him to jail because when she was looking at him, he looks like a kid. She wouldn't want him to spend the rest of his life in jail. And she was basically saying that the prosecution was probing and asking, like, okay, so even though he looks like a child, like, are you able to set aside the way that he looks, and are you able to base it off of the evidence and the law? And she basically responded, and she was basically saying that she feels as like she hopes that he learned from this. Like, she was like, I just hope he learned from it. I don't feel comfortable sentencing him to jail. All right, so then and then she talked about kids and parents about proportionality, said that this is a microcosm of a school, social, economic, classes, all those things impact the goal. And the rule is to have critical thinkers with proportionality. So that's what she said. And she said that she can't do it. All right, so oh, and then so Carmelo Anthony had the decision to decide if the judge punishes him in the penalty phase. Like, if he's found guilty, he was able to decide whether the judge gives him his sentence or if the jury gives him the sentence. He decided that he wants the jury to hand him his sentence. And so that's what they also were emphasizing, that the importance of them in jury duty, because not only are they going to be finding him guilty or innocent, it is also their responsibility to determine whether he gets 5 to 99 years. The charge carries a sentence of 5 to 99 years.
Lord, y'all, let's keep this family in prayers, because I would not want this boy to get life in prison. I would not want that. You know, so please, let's keep this family uplifted, y'all. Please, let's keep this family uplifted.
And they were putting the burden on them, or the responsibility of them, to know that they're the ones who's going to be sentencing him. They're the ones who's going to be coming up with the sentencing range. They're the ones who is going to determine everything of this case, other than the judge is basically just going to.
And y'all, what do y'all feel about the jury? What do y'all feel? What do y'all feel with all these jurors being white? How do y'all feel the sentence may go? How do y'all feel? Let me know in the chat. How do y'all feel? What would they come to a conclusion with the sentence?
Going to be calling, you know, like sustaining the objections, overruling, or admitting certain things in evidence or not in evidence. That's the judge's role, but their role is to listen to the evidence that does come in. Now, the judge, his power is in what comes in and what doesn't. A lot of people in the comments are probably thinking like, well, why can't the judge make decision on that? The judge is making the biggest decision that the judge can make is what they get to hear to base their decision off of. There could be critical things that can make you think otherwise, but that wasn't presented to you because the judge didn't allow it in. And that can totally change, you know, the thought process or whatever in the case. So the judge has a lot of power, and he's going to be exercising a lot of power on what makes it in and what doesn't. And their goal or their job is based on what does make it in to determine from that. So keep that in mind. So anyways, so another person said that they don't think that they could set punishment. Another person said that they think that it will be hard to give him life. And they wanted to know.
Pina, I think that started today.
So another person said that she said that he would go towards the lower side of punishment. He said because he's so young, if he was to make a decision on how long he got in jail, he would lean towards the lower side because of his age. And he says, I don't believe in this case because of his age, and I would go lower. Another juror said, being a mom, she said that she can't decide on the punishment due to his age. Another person says they would find it very difficult to find any range of I just put very difficult to find any range. Anyways, next. Another juror says, you keep saying the word life. I want to confirm you are only talking about imprisonment. And then another person asked, how old? They were like, you guys keep talking about his age. Like, how old is he? And then the prosecution says that he can't tell them the age right now because he can't tell them in this phase the facts of the case. The facts of the case only come when they are seated. All right. So another person says, I don't think I can consider life if he said, okay, so he was saying that he said that when he thinks about a person serving life in prison, he thinks about the worst of the worst, like the worst of the worst criminals, like the person that committed like the most heinous crimes. He feels like the life sentence is reserved for people like that. Based on Carmelo Anthony, I'm paraphrasing what he said. He didn't say it exactly like that, but that's what he was basically saying. He said he doesn't think he can consider life because he reserves those types of punishments for the worst of the worst. So I inferred that he must think that Carmelo isn't the worst of the worst. Another juror, they also said that they couldn't consider life. Another juror says, what if it's in the heat of the moment? So the prosecution said, in Texas, you can consider something being done in the heat of the moment, and that's called sudden passion, where something happens and they don't have the time to cool off. If you guys find that his charge fell under sudden passion and not first-degree murder, the sentencing range would be between 2 to 20 years. So if he was found guilty on first-degree murder, the range would be 5 to 99 years. But if they found that this was something that happened in the heat of the moment, and it was just like what we describe as a crime of passion in Texas, they label it sudden passion, and that sentence would range 2 to 20 years. So at that time, we broke for lunch. That's when I did my live outside. And then when we came back after lunch, it was time for the defense to do their voir dire. So we went out. I did my live that you guys saw on the court grounds. And then we went back in. And when we went back in, it was time for Carmelo Anthony's lawyer to do his voir dire. So when he got up to do his voir dire, they turned on the monitors when he was already speaking. So when he introduced himself, or if he introduced himself and said, like, because the prosecution, he gave a background on like, oh, I come from a small town, I'm the district attorney, et cetera, et cetera. When it came to Carmelo Anthony's lawyer, they turned on the TV monitor and the audio after lunch, after he was already talking to the jury. So I was like, what's up with that little delay? Like, we don't get to hear what he said in the beginning. So if he described like his background, we didn't hear that. So anyways, so when they turned on the audio, it says the question in this case is, if you in a moment felt your life was in danger, you have a right to defend yourself. So he was focused on self-defense and why Carmelo Anthony was within his rights to have a knife, and why it's legal to carry a knife, and why he was like, we're going to get into all of those things now from the defense. So his defense attorney is Mike Howard, and he says freedom either applies to all of us or they shouldn't apply to none of us. Okay. He said, oftentimes there is a government overreach. So he also too was trying to explain to the jury their power because and why they're in the position that they're in, because government oftentimes has a lot of overreach, dictatorship, and because they don't want this to be a dictatorship, they want them to be able to make decisions with a jury of their peers. And he said that he feels like this is their duty to make sure that our rights are protected. He says, when we answer our call to jury duty and the law is given to us and we protect our freedoms, he like boldly walked to the front and he says, I am proud to represent Carmelo Anthony. I'm going to refer to him as Melo. This is a big and important day for Melo. So he said for the rest of the trial, he said all of Carmelo Anthony's family, all of his friends and classmates, none of them call him Carmelo. They all call him his nickname Melo. So he said that he's going to refer to him as Melo. And he emphasized how proud of him and how proud he was to represent him in this case. He said that he wasn't going to try to duplicate anything that the prosecution went over, but that he wanted to reiterate some of the important things, but he was going to make sure that he didn't like duplicate and keep reiterating the same things that they already heard. So he was kind of trying to let them know that like you may hear similar things, but I'm going to take a different approach. So he said, the oath you took today is different than the oath you will take if you are on the jury. That honesty is to be honest with yourself. And it says, juror number 13, stand up. What does brutal honesty mean to you? And the juror said, it means it's going to hurt the person being honest or the person hearing. So he was basically saying brutal honesty to him means that whether or not it hurts you or not, like tell the truth. That's kind of what he was saying. He said, as a father and a parent, we have to say things to protect. And then he started talking fast and I couldn't keep up. But he was basically saying, like, sometimes you have to like protect your children and you have to tell them like the brutal, honest truth, like even if it's going to hurt them, you have to be honest. So that was his explanation of like brutal honesty. And then the prosecutor said, telling the truth, whether other person wants to hear it or not, because it's the truth. There are no right or wrong answers in jury duty. We don't want you to tell us what you think we want to hear. The judge doesn't want you to tell us what you think we want to hear. We use the word bias and prejudice. Bias means you start off with a leaning before hearing the evidence. Many told us that you know things or thought you knew things about the case, and based on that, you formed an opinion. How many of you that think that you know about the case, how many of you think that you can set aside what you know to basically make a decision on the evidence? So one of the jurors stood up and said, possibly, I didn't see a lot of details, but what I heard on the news, he said, I didn't see a lot of details, but what I heard on the news. So as soon as he said what, like those words, what I heard on the news, the judge immediately jumped in and the judge was like, nope, stop.
Now, he know he shouldn't have said that because you ain't supposed to have been watching no news and none of that. And he should have just kept that to himself, okay? Kept that to himself. Y'all, I'm going to jump off of here at 1:30 because you know it's my granddaughter prom and I got to get myself together. So I'm going to stay up until 1:30, but I did go over my time because I said 12:30, but I'm jumping off exactly at 1:30.
He was like, don't say what you heard on the news. We don't want to hear. We don't want to hear you say
yes,
what you heard on the news.
No, he ain't supposed to have said that.
Oh, y'all saying to change the chat thing? Oh, hold on 1 second. 1 second.
Man, come on now. You're just making it
1
bad.
second, y'all. Hold on. Let me do it real quick. Let me see. Are they cutting up in the chat? How do I do it? Wait.
Yeah, a lot of content creators, when they cover big
Kamezo
cases
here.
like this, they cut the chat off because sometimes it can get ugly in the chat. If anyone like to donate to my channel,
All right, I think I changed it. I'm not sure.
Much so appreciated.
Did I change it? Did I change it? Anyways, tell me if I changed it. Is it on subscriber only?
Yep.
Okay.
That's a good way to put it too.
All right. All right. So, all right, let's see. Damn, where was I at? Oh, okay. So the guy, he basically said, based on what I heard, he was like, I didn't see a lot of details, but what I heard on the news, and then the judge jumped in and he was like, nope, don't say what you heard on the news. And then he said, and then the prosecution was like, based on then he said, based on what I heard, I already formed an opinion. And then the defense said, can you take the oath and say you can set that aside? And then the juror says, I'm not sure, I'm just being honest. And then he says, how many of you feel like juror number 19, where you think that you know something you've been exposed to about the case and you can't set that aside? So another juror says, I fall into the same category as 19. I do a lot of reading in my younger age, and I've been in a similar situation. He said, and in my situation when I was younger, I ran like hell. I was unscathed. I was unscarred, and nobody was harmed. I want this gentleman to have a fair and honest trial. And so he was basically saying, listen, I've been in similar situations, and my method was running. I ran away from it, and I wasn't harmed, and they weren't harmed. And because of my own experience of, running from confrontation, I don't think I'm right for this jury. And I think that he should have somebody that can set the bias aside. I cannot. And so the defense says, so basically what you're saying is, I can't set my life experience aside and not base my knowledge on the evidence. And then the juror responded, he said, I'm not sure. And then the defense said, based on that, you feel you can't set aside and follow the law. And then another juror says, relationships that I've had, I can't be sure that I can form a decision. So the defense said, okay, well, let's switch topics. The law says the burden is on the government to prove the case, and it never switches to the defense for anything. A lot of people say they can follow that law so a lot of people say that they can follow that law in a theft case, but in a case with murder, that's a different ball game for me. So he was basically, the defense was saying, there's some people who say like, oh, I could follow the law if it's like somebody just steals something or something like petty crime. But when it comes to murder, like, are you going to let emotions override law and evidence? That's what he was saying in so many words. So another juror says, and I found this interesting. He was like, juror 269 says, I follow this case a lot, and I know a lot about the case outside sources. He said, I follow this case a lot, and I know a lot about the case, and he has outside sources. He said, it's hard to follow the case and not hear the defendant say something and not hold it against him. Says it's difficult to ignore that he has been silent. He can't set that aside. So he was basically saying that he's been watching the news, he's been following the case, he got insiders into the case, and because the defendant has exercised his right to remain.
Yeah, this one here. Well, a couple of jurors was speaking on that they want to hear him speak. What happened there? What led up to this? So a lot of jurors were saying they want him to speak, to testify on his behalf. But I don't think he's going to testify on his behalf. And he don't have to.
Silent, he holds that against him. Okay, he feels like that makes him, he didn't say that makes him guilty, but that's what he was saying. Like,
right.
if you're
In other words, he
innocent,
was
you
saying
would
that.
speak.
Absolutely.
But because you are exercising your right to remain silent, I find that fishy. That's basically, in so many words, what he was saying. Another juror number 213 says, more of a question most of us know we hear most is from TV. Is it his job to speak or his attorney? So the other juror that spoke up was kind of like clapping back a little bit. I was like, oop, not the clap back. So the other juror was basically like, is it his job to speak or is it his attorney's job to speak? Like,
well, that's what his attorney is there for.
like
That's what he got paid for.
That's kind of like what they were saying. And they wanted to know whose job is it to determine whether he speaks or doesn't speak. And the defense attorney, he responded and he said, we give him advice, but the defendant, it's his choice whether he speaks or not, but ultimately we advise him.
Right.
And so the juror says, I understand not speaking, but I feel if you were not if you were not innocent of a crime, you would be yelling from the rooftop. Most who heard about the case formed an opinion. So he felt like,
I guess he's trying to say he's guilty because he don't want to speak. That don't mean that. That doesn't mean that. He don't have to get on the jury stand. You know how many people that's in jail for trials and stuff like that, and they don't speak, they don't get on the jury stand. Their lawyer do all their talking. The lawyer advised them not to get on the stand. Maybe some lawyers will advise their client to get on the stand. All depends on the case. So that don't mean he's guilty because he's not speaking. I mean, that's crazy.
And I probably wrote it weird, but he felt like if you are an innocent person, you wouldn't be quiet. Like, you wouldn't be silent. Like, you would be yelling your innocence to the mountaintop. But what this person has to realize is, if you already know that you have the right to remain silent and anything that you say can and will be used against you, then it might be wise to not speak until it's time to make a statement. And that's your right, whether you speak or not. So another person says, I feel like I'm not the right juror for this case. Another person says, I feel the same way based on the media coverage. You, the defense, would have to prove something otherwise. Another person says, I feel the same way. I'd be looking for y'all to prove something for me. Another juror says, I'm looking for, I would expect the full burden to be on the state. I would expect there to be a turn of refuting what the state brought as evidence. So the defense.
Some of them jurors, y'all, I hate to say it, but some of them sound like they bullies.
Says, I guess there was one of the jurors that was nodding his head after the guy was speaking. He says he thinks taking an oath is serious and he's married and he takes his vow serious or something. I don't know. It was weird. Anyways, so all the while that they were talking to them, there was a monitor in the room that they were in, and there was like slides that was going on there. Like, I can see that there was words on the screen that they were like showing them, but I couldn't make out what it said. So I noted that. I was like, they're showing them slides, but I can't tell what the slides are. And then so one of the jurors wanted to get an example on what reasonable doubt is. So they said, like, is it fair to ask for an example of reasonable doubt? And the defense attorney said that he can't give them the percentage of reasonable doubt, right? Like, I can't say that a prosecution, in order for it to be reasonable doubt, they have to prove 99% that he's guilty. Or I can't, like, reasonable doubt isn't like 99% I think he might be guilty or 1%. he may not be guilty. He said, what reasonable doubt is to you? Like, do you like what you think reasonable doubt is? Like, we can't tell you what reasonable doubt, like what the percentage is or what is reasonable. Like, we can't tell you that. You have to think for yourself, basically. So then he wanted to know, like, if there was anybody who was going to hold it against him if he didn't take the stand. And one person said that she wouldn't be able to set aside her like formed opinion already. Another person says, this doesn't seem logical. I want to hear the other side of a story. In my brain, I want to hear two sides to a story. So she was like, it doesn't seem logical that the defense doesn't have to like tell their side. She's like, I want to hear both sides. Like, I want to hear their side and I want to hear your side. Like, that's not logical to me that the defense doesn't have to prove the case. Like, you know how they say the burden is on the state. So that part is like, shouldn't y'all have to prove it too? Like, I want to hear both sides. And then the defense says the law says that you have to be able to change your brain and follow this. And she said, it will be hard to say not guilty if I didn't hear the person's side of the story. Another person says, same as she said, the way my brain works, I can say I will follow it. But if I go back to the jury room, I'm going to say, why didn't he say something? The defense attorney says, why might a person not testify? So you guys are saying that you would hold it against him. And again, this is me like inferring stuff, but he was alluding, like basically saying, like, based on what they had just said, you guys are saying that you need him to testify or you were holding against him. Well, what are reasons that he might not testify? Like, what's a reason to you that a person might not testify? So then somebody said that they said if the presentation from the government is not sufficient, there is no reason to. So one of the jurors said, hey, like, I think that the reason that a juror might not testify is because the state's case is weak, basically. Another person says another reason why they might not testify is they might not be eloquent or able to speak in front of that many people. Another person says, if you're not going to stand up for yourself, then they said, if you're not going to stand up for yourself, then who is? Belief in oneself. So they kept saying over and over, like, belief in oneself. Like, if you're not going to stand up for yourself, then who is? Basically saying in so many words, like, you need to defend yourself by testifying. Another person says another reason why they might not testify is if they were advised not to. Another person says a reason why they think that they might not testify is if they were young and they may be shy or they may be under pressure and it might be difficult. And so at this time, the defense said, Mello, close your ears. He was like, Mello, close your ears. So when he said that, Carmelo Anthony looked and he was like, so everybody in the overflow room, they start busting up laughing because you kind of seen his personality and his interaction with his lawyer. His lawyer was like, Mello, cover your ears. And then he was like, you know, like this. And then his defense attorney started talking about, like, you know, reasons why a person might, you know, they might not be eloquent in speaking or whatever. But it wasn't really, he didn't really say anything that Mello needed to really cover his ears. But that interaction, like I said, it kind of like, you know, it kind of showed his personality, like, Mello, cover your ears, you know, showing like, oh, this is like, these are innocent ears here. Like, this is an innocent man. Like, let's not share, you know, like, you know, basically inferring he's a child, you know. Anyways, so I thought that was interesting. So he talked about, you know, people speaking eloquent and how he said that, you know, in so many words, the defense was saying, you guys might, you know, have these questions of like, oh, maybe they're not eloquent or whatever, but he emphasized how the burden was not on them. So it's not up to them to prove whether or not the person is eloquent or not. Like, it doesn't matter whether they're eloquent or not, because by law, their right is that they don't have to testify. That was what he said in so many words. Again, I was writing and paraphrasing. And then another guy, he talked about a reason why you might not testify. And he said a reason why is because it's our constitutional right not to self-incriminate. All right. So then the defense said, all right, well, let's switch topics to Texas law about weapons. He says Texas gives people a lot of rights to weapons, and that law also extends to weapons that are not just guns. He said that this was an open carry state and there are lax laws about people being able to carry guns. And he said that, would it surprise you that that same law applies to knives? And he said,
and y'all, I did not know that. I did not know that. That was something new for me, especially for Texas. I didn't know that.
That same law applies to knives as well. He said you can take a small knife under 5 inches into a public place, and that's not breaking the law. And nothing that says it's a crime for a teenager to do that under Texas law. He said,
wow, I did not know that, guys. Did y'all know that? Do anybody here live in Texas?
What do you guys think about that? Like, what do you guys think about the fact that it's not illegal to carry a knife, and it's not illegal to be a teenager and carry a knife into a public place? There's nothing in the law that says that that's illegal. And he's like, what do you think about that? Like, what do you guys think about that? And then one of the guys commenting, he says, although it's the law, I do think that that's kind of crazy. He's like, that's crazy. Like, the guy was like, what? Like, that's crazy. He said, that's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'll be able to take the oath of being a juror, because I feel like that's crazy. And then the defense says, under Texas law, it's not against the law for me to take a knife under 5 inches into a public place. Despite that being the case, would you feel still that's engaging in criminal activity? And the judge told him to rephrase his question. And the prosecution was like, you know, they started getting antsy. Like, he was like going into territory he wasn't supposed to. And they were like acting like they about to get up or whatever. Like, what was said? The judge was like, rephrase. Like, I was like, oh, it's getting cooked. It was like, it's heating up in here, you know? And then it started heating up some more. I was like, okay, they got a lot going on. They got a lot going on. All right. So he said self-defense under Texas law. We have a right to self-defense under Texas law. It says a person is justified when and to the degree they feel that force is necessary. You don't have to wait until somebody hits you to defend yourself. A person who has a right to be present where the force is used and you're not involved in criminal activity, you don't have to retreat before force is issued. So he was basically giving them the actual law on self-defense. Like, despite what you think self-defense isn't when you wait till somebody beats you up and you're all bloody, then you can defend yourself. Self-defense is when you feel, and hold on, let me go back and read it exactly because I jotted it down. It says, a person under Texas law, it says a person is justified when and to the degree they feel that force is necessary. You don't have to wait until somebody hits you to defend yourself. A person who has a right to be present where the force is used and you're not involved in criminal activity, you don't have to retreat before force is issued. And then I put in a note and I said the prosecution does not like that he keeps mentioning a knife, because every time he mentioned the fact about a knife being not illegal under 5.5, the prosecution was like, he was inching, like, you know, like he about to you know, like about to get up and object, you know, like he was on the edge of his seat every time he mentioned a knife in 5.5. He was like, you know. So he then talked about justification and what justifies self-defense. And then he says, so let's take, you know, for example, he says, you're in a public place with friends and family, and I walk up uninvited and you say, hey, I don't know you. You need to leave. The prosecution jumped up. As soon as he said that, the prosecution jumped up out of his seat. Objection. Because he's using the exact facts of the case, just with a different scenario. And they're not supposed to be speaking the exact facts of the case. But what he did was, instead of saying a person went to a track meet, he said a park. And they felt like, well, what I assume, because he made the objection and they went talk to the judge. What I assume is that analogy is too close to the facts of the case. So they objected. They, you know, and I'll say what he said again. He said, you're in a public place with friends and family, and I walk up uninvited and you say, hey, I don't know you. I need you to leave. That's when the objection came in. They went to the judge. The judge, I guess, sustained the analogy, like sustained it, and he had to rephrase. So he came back and he said, let's talk about the duty to retreat. A lot of people feel if it was them, they would just turn and walk away. How many feel like that when faced with an aggressive situation, they would just walk away? How many of you would expect other people to do that? What do you think? And then one of the jurors says, I'm not keen on conflict. I will let the person leave. There are times force is necessary, though. Another person says, I do agree with that. Talking about self-defense would need to be proved. Another person says, getting through the definition of words, the word provoked is like, how is that legally defined? So they wanted to know, like, what do you guys legally define the word provoke? Like, what's the legal definition of somebody provoking you? And so he said, you can't goad somebody into attacking you. That's provoking. And then somebody said, so you're saying the judge will determine whether it's self-defense or not. So I found this to be interesting. So the juror wanted to know, who's going to determine whether or not this is self-defense? Is it the judge? And the defense said that it cannot be determined whether this is self-defense until the entire trial goes by. So, like, you know, that everybody presents all the evidence, and at the end of that, there's going to be a time where at the very end that the judge decides if he thinks self-defense was raised and appropriate for them to determine. So if the judge listens to all the claims and, you know, Carmelo Anthony saying, you know, he felt like, you know, it was self-defense, and the judge feels like he doesn't feel like it met the mark, then he can say, this ain't self-defense and it's not something that the jury will consider. But if the judge hears all the evidence, and at the end of that, if he decides that he does think that self-defense is something for them to consider, then they will go back to the jury, and that will be something that they would also determine. So basically, they would then determine like sudden passion or whatever at that point, but not until the judge hears the case and decides. So it doesn't start off from the front like, oh, let's consider self-defense now. It's up to the judge whether he's only going to be facing first-degree murder or if they can consider anything else.
Okay, y'all, I gotta cut that short because I gotta get off. Brittany, I feel they was bullies, the twins. And you know who the twins remind me of, y'all? I don't know if y'all remember that case where the boy got found in the gym unalive. You remember that case? Those two brothers was bullies also, just like these damn twins. Because I do believe these twins was bullies. Now, I don't know if their mother, if the son ever reported it to the mom, and the mom was reporting to the school. And that's why I tell y'all it's very important when your kids, your grandkids, your grandson, or whatever come home and tell y'all they're being bullied, you need to keep records of this stuff. The time, the dates you called the school, who you spoke to, what was the conversation about? Did you go to the school and have a meeting with the parents? If you did, the time, the day, what was the conversation about? What they said it was going to do. If nothing was done, jot that down. You need to keep records because you never know when things like this can occur. And you can always pull out your paperwork and you have proof. But this case here, these two boys, I'm going to say not the case, but the two boys reminds me, these twins, they reminds me of those two boys that bullied that boy and the mother never got justice for her son being unalived in that gym. Okay? Yeah, if y'all can remember that. They didn't own that tent. Exactly. They didn't. They did not own that tent. Yes, I do the same thing. Keep a recording of everything. Yep, you have to do it because you never know when you might have to go back and you need this stuff, you know. So I'm going to get up off of here, y'all, because I got to get myself together for my granddaughter prom today. I will be back tomorrow with more coverage on tomorrow. I thank you guys for timing in with me. If y'all would like to donate to the channel, y'all can. The link is pinned at the bottom. I appreciate you guys so much. And I would definitely see you guys tomorrow. I wouldn't get off so early, y'all, if I didn't have to go to my granddaughter prom, but I got to get myself prepped and get things together here. So I love you guys and thank everyone that timed in. I appreciate you so much. And thank the two people for y'all support. I appreciate that too. And I would definitely see you guys tomorrow. Great live, Miss D. Tell your granddaughter congratulations. I definitely will. I see you guys tomorrow. Peace and love.